Welcome to Sports in the 607, where we talk games people play. Here's your host, Bob Michaels.
Welcome, everybody. In my travels in the 607 calling area, I've run into many folks, and I think something that we would say today that's synonymous with sports in the 607, cross country, track, and the name Ray Lawson. And Ray Lawson is our guest today as we talk, as I said, cross country and track. And gentleman who I guess cut his teeth when it came to running in the Jasper-Troopsburg area. Went to the University of Rochester where he's a standout athlete. And now for well over a decade, cross country and track coach at Corning Painted Post High School. Ray, welcome. And I'm glad you're available to talk about, obviously, something very near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bob, for having me on, and it's exciting to be here, and appreciate the opportunity, and feel very honored.
Ray and I have chatted many different times, whether when he's been coaching in the season or we've done a few interviews featured on RLM Sports, our parent company. And Ray, I want to have you take us back. And how did it all begin for you? And was track and cross country the only sport that you were involved with as a young person?
Pretty much. I did, like in Little League baseball for a little bit and wasn't very good at that. Did a little bit of soccer and, pickup basketball. But my dad was a runner in high school. And then just growing up on a farm, we would race around the fields, and he could, like most kids, you compete with your dad, and when you can finally beat him, you feel pretty proud. And I think that really got me interested in running, was the fact that my father was a runner in high school, and then of all the sports, it came the easiest to me, I guess.
Well, one of the things that I found when I used to run, back in high school and everything, certainly not to the competitive way that you have in your background, but the euphoria that you have after completing a long run and how you have a chance to, I don't know, maybe interact with yourself and kind of clear your mind and things of that nature. Did you find that to be true for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think in distance running, and I'll speak to that a lot of what people may not understand is a lot of it does go on in your mind. I mean, everybody has a certain talent level, and then we train to improve that talent level. But there's a lot in your mind of, I guess, being willing to, especially when you're racing, endure some suffering, endure some discomfort, and find a positive voice to make that worthwhile. And it is very, very satisfying. Uh, I don't know about the euphoria so much. People talk about the runner's high, and maybe once in a while you have a race where everything clicks and you're like, wow, I cannot believe how well I felt at the end of that race. But that's not the typical runner's experience. That happens once or twice, maybe in a season, or even sometimes in a runner's life, that they have a race where they just have this amazing feeling. Uh, but there is a great sense of satisfaction of just accomplishing something. And a lot of that with distance running, only you know what you've accomplished in terms of how well you suffered and how well you pushed through the limits.
Well, obviously you are entrenched in Corning Painted Post athletics, and I think back to something that was said to me a couple of years ago when every time you looked at a competitive sport at Corning High School, um, I think it's Dave Harrington who kind of offhandedly said to me, Bob, unofficially, Corning should be known as Title Town because you take a look at the multiple sports, whether it's football or
Mhm.
basketball or lacrosse or softball, and keep on going. And obviously, lumping that in there, cross country and track. Why do you think these young people, these young men and young women, are so gifted that they're able to produce something, results like we've seen in recent years?
Well, I know there's different levels. So one for cross country, it's really developing a culture, and we're very reliant on our seniors and juniors or upperclassmen who set the culture. Because we as coaches can come up with the workouts and we can have a plan for developing across the course of a season, but it's the athletes who have to go out and execute the workouts and the runs the proper way. And I do feel like we've built a culture, and it didn't start with me. I mean, I was very fortunate to inherit from Lou Fiorillo a very good running program and a culture of people who were willing to train. But in distance running, the key is staying healthy and building across time. And we just have a core of runners who are willing to train, from season to season. And when the new runners show up, when the freshmen show up, I
Hmm.
don't have to try to do a sales job. They join the culture of the seniors. In track and field, we're very fortunate. Also, we have a group of experienced coaches who've worked together for a long time, and I do think as athletes experience success, it's a little easier. It comes to be expected, and so you're not trying to break through all the time and perform on the big stage. They've been there, and I hope we don't ever lose that, because that's something that your veterans pass on to the new class, a certain confidence of performing at big meets and things like that.
Well, the thing that impresses me most, let's say, for example, when I've gone over to the Hawks Nest for basketball games during the year, the your winter sports athletes, your runners, are very busy in. What a gift you have, Ray. You have a facility that probably rivals a
Mhm.
Division III college complex in terms of the field house that you have in Corning. Would you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that is and I never take that for granted. In Corning, we're so supported in terms of our facilities. The weight room is as good as many, we have many athletes come back from university and comment how well, how good our facilities are. So I think in terms of our track and field facilities, the indoor track, although it's not a competition track, when the weather's horrible, it's a chance to be inside and continue your training. We used to run in the halls on the concrete, which was really, beat people up. And the indoor track, the walking track that we use for workouts, that helps. So that has, and I think the especially now we have the ability, if athletes are starting to come up with an injury, to cross train in that fitness club. There's ellipticals, there's treadmills, there's bikes. So we really have the facilities to help us train athletes at a high level. So,
Well, the Corning School District's competition in track and cross country speaks for itself. We want to talk about that and some standout athletes who have crossed paths with Ray Lawson and his coaching staff. That'll be coming up shortly, right here on Sports in the 607. Sports in the 607 is presented in part by Empire Sports of the Southern Tier. Ray Lawson, our guest today, talking cross country and track, especially as it applies to the Corning's Painted Post School District. In our last segment, Ray, we talked about the formation and the transition of the success of the Hawks program, and you mentioned Lou Fiorillo, and had the pleasure of knowing and working with Lou from time to time. When do you think, when you came on the scene, when do you see maybe things turning a little bit more toward, I don't want to say every day, but it just seemed like every time we turn around, you watch a sportscast, or you read a news article about the Corning Schools District, these young men, these young women achieving ultimate heights. When did that take place, do you think?
I think it was uh, a sort of a group effort. I mean, I think when I took over from Lou, we had a very strong runner, Jared Cornfield, who was a Division I runner, and he's now the coach at Northern Arizona. So I had an elite runner that I inherited, I guess I would say, from Lou. And then we had a group of younger guys who were, I think they put Jared like it's something they couldn't attain to. And when they started training over the summer, they started to really gain some confidence and sort of establish a culture, I think, that's carried on. I have to give a lot of credit to Andrew Cartwright. Was for many years an assistant coach to me. He was the head indoor coach before me, and he was the outdoor distance coach. And so for a number of years, I was the head cross country coach and then would fill in track and field and all kinds of roles. And he really uh, focused on making sure that our athletes were aware of what people were doing at the national level. So, what kind of times were people running at the national level? What kind of uh, distances were people, throwing and heights they were jumping? And really tried to set up a culture where athletes weren't, they were trying to win sectional championships, hopefully win state championships, but also qualify for nationals. And I really do think that he had set that culture, and it made me start thinking at that level too, beyond beyond not looking through section 4, but having athletes know what's it take to do well in section 4, what's it take to do well at the state level, what's it take to do well at the national level. So I do give a lot of credit to Andrew Cartwright, and that kind of inspired me to coach that way too, to think beyond that. So, but I do think once we started having some athletes qualify for nationals, that also creates an excitement, and people we never look beyond our sectional goals, our state goals, but that really did inspire a culture of people trying to achieve something, great.
And you bring out Andrew Cartwright, and I knew him as Haas.
Yeah,
kind of take off a takeoff of the Bonanza TV show and all of that. And when shortly after Tim Shattuck and I formed RLM Sports, we did a variety of interviews with athletes, which included boys relay teams from those early years. We started up right around 2012 with RLM Sports, so it became one of the many different features that we were able to offer. And there's an opportunity right now, maybe, Coach, just to drop some names of the young athletes that you crossed paths with back in the early beginning of Ray Lawson.
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I probably should have made a list, because I'm going to be remiss and leave people off. And I early on, I just remember, and there was just a group of guys who early on, Stephen Rossetti and Ryan Carl, Tim Bannock, Austin Holbrook. There was a group of guys who early on in cross country, we really finished second a lot to Ithaca in cross country. And there's a lot, you learn a lot from losing, and you gain wisdom from suffering and all that. But with that group of guys, that was the first group of boys that we won a sectional championship, got a team to states with. And that was a huge, I don't count, and I really don't know the number of sectional championships, but I do remember that one that we just, there was a year when Stephen Rossetti I think he was a junior, and it was a muddy day, and we fought hard, and we lost the sectional championship to Ithaca. And there's just a picture of us sitting, all the athletes are sitting on these benches, and they're covered in mud, and their heads are down. And I think the picture was even in the paper. And I said, well, let's next year have a little bit better picture. And Stephen Rossetti said, we're going to win it next year. And he's somebody who stands out. I hate to pick out, certain individuals, but I remember him, sort of being an inspiration to get that group going and say, we're going to win that next year. And we did his senior year.
Ray, there have been some milestones that we want to talk about here, including Coach of the Year award that was accorded to you. We'll touch upon that right after the break on Sports in the 607. Sports in the 607, presented by First Heritage Federal Credit Union. Well, fans, in true fashion, Ray Lawson is not unlike other coaches who don't single out players purposely, but there are some young men, some young women that I have covered in sports in the 607 area that you have lasting memories for. And Ray, I probably don't have the timeline correct at this point. What I want to go back to 2013, young lady by the name of Jess Lawson. What comes to mind when I say that name?
Well, it was, that I will say that first year she came out as a freshman, and I know runners pretty well. I knew she was going to be a pretty good runner, and I could see in the summer training that she was training with our boys. But we had our first big cross country invitational, what's called a pre-state invitational, and you're facing all the runners. And I remember she asked me, like, how do you think I can do? I said, well, maybe if you're in the top half, that'll be a good start. Maybe you finish in the top 30. That would be really great. And in the race, throughout the race, she's in second place. She's battling for the lead. She beat the previous year's state champion, and I was kind of blown away. I was like, okay, there was another level, because I could see her in training and the way she raced. And then, she's my daughter, so I obviously knew she was talented. But that was really a special year. Her freshman year, I mean, she had a great running career and still continues to have a great running career. But I will say, back in 2013, that was my first time coaching one of my children. I've been very fortunate since that year. I've always had one of my children on the team, and I still do. So that's been a pleasure. But yeah, she really, and she went on to win a state championship in cross country that year, and an indoor state championship, and outdoor. So she had it was kind of a Cinderella season for sure. And she had a very good group of senior girls who were on that team too, and upperclassmen who were very supportive, and just we had a good tight knit group that year too.
Well, even if Ray doesn't delve into it, I will mention it here. 3 daughters that were runners, 2 sons. Sarah, I guess probably in the pecking order is probably the 3rd youngest girl. Am I correct?
She is. So yes, she's the youngest of the girls. Yep, and she's a sophomore
Okay.
at Syracuse, running there in Syracuse. Yep, I should know my own kids, but I haven't even think about that.
You don't need a scorecard, coach. Well, and I like to get into that element of dads coaching their children and all of that. I can remember a media conference that was held in the cafeteria at the high school, when Jess announced that she was going to Stanford, and most recently with Sarah signing for Syracuse. But tell me what your emotions were like that day. I know you got up and you addressed the crowd that attended and everything like that, but was that a kind of a real special feeling for you, not only as a coach, but more importantly as a parent?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of, and I guess that's my first child going to college and going through that process, and it was a uh, interesting process for her, because she was at such a high level that she had many schools interested in her, and we did the recruiting visits. And Stanford was the one, though, that they're like, okay, we know you're a runner, we know all of that talent. When she was applying, don't put down all of these other essays and things like that. Don't put running. We know you're a runner. So it was still that was her number one choice. It wasn't a
Right.
given that she was going to get into Stanford. So just very proud of her that, besides the running, is a good student. And so that, yeah, very proud day. And if you've ever visited Stanford campus, it is probably the most beautiful campus I've ever been on. It is. So very proud of her and proud of that day. And knowing that she was going to, uh, I always stress for athletes, hopefully you can go to a program where there are people better than you to train with, and you can see yourself like aspiring to be as good as
Hmm.
the top people at that program. And Stanford, is among the best in distance running and cross country. So it really was a good school for her to get better at as a runner, and obviously get a great degree from as well.
Well, let's take a look at some accolades. Back in 2016, Ray, you were named as the Class A New York State Boys Coach of the Year. 2022, Coach of the Year for cross country, U.S. track and field. And again, we go back to the athletes who were I don't want to say they were the supporting cast, but, makes a coach look pretty darn good. Would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I will say, like in 2016, we were the favorites all year long. We were ranked #1 in the state. We had a great team, and that first state championship, uh, really couldn't even enjoy it. It was just relief, like with that team. Pressure to like just perform and do what was expected. So when we won that one, I think it was kind of just for me, it was just a sigh, like, okay, I didn't screw it up. We didn't screw it up. The next year we came back in 2017 was probably one of the most satisfying cross country championships we had. Was that it was a uh, rainy, miserable, horrible day before the meet. It was so bad on the course that we started to run the course. You typically run the course the day before the meet. And the conditions were so bad that we just stopped and we went and ran on the roads. The next morning, and a lot of teams didn't even bother going to the course the day because it was so bad. The next morning, it was about 20 degrees. Everything was frozen. It was sleeting, and most teams were just miserable. And we were like, this is so much better. I mean, I really think it had an effect because we'd been in the mud and slipping and frozen hard ground. We were like, this is perfect. This is so much better than yesterday. It really gave us a boost. That 2017 one was a very satisfying one. And then we had another group, and having each year, you have a group, and that's your goal, to try to win a sectional championship, to try to win a state championship. Some years it seems attainable, and 16 and 17 and 21, 22 it did, and we're very fortunate to have groups and that we're able to do that.
When we return after the break, I want to drop some names, and it'll be kind of like a word association. I'll mention the name.
Sure.
Ray, you respond. That's right after the break here on Sports in the 607. Sports in the 607, brought to you by On a Roll, Hanover Square Horseheads. Ray Lawson is a gentleman who has been very congenial when it comes for me to reach out and I'll say, hey, coach, can we get together? Can we talk about certain things and all of that? And in the last segment, I got thinking, Ray, as you were responding, some coaches have the luxury of kind of picking and choosing events that they participate. Football, not so much the case, but in softball and baseball and finding opponents. Does that rule carry over for cross country and track in this day and age for you?
Yes, very much so. And that is something that we're very fortunate at the Corning School District, that if I make out a schedule and I'd say I'd like to go race these teams or race at this invitational, because this is where the best teams in New York are, the best athletes. Our school district is so supportive of transportation, providing the transportation for us to do that. So we'll be going to McQuaid meet invitational in Rochester this weekend, and then in 2 weeks we go to the Bronx for the Manhattan Invitational. We pick a couple of meets each year in cross country to try to face the best teams in New York and the best teams on the East Coast. Indoor track, we go down to Staten Island or to the Armory maybe once during the season to really race the best competition. We race Rochester schools in indoor track. Outdoor track, same thing. We can go to Rochester. We can go to Penn Relays to face the best. So that really is a way to test. You can have an idea from practice and local meets how you're doing, but yeah, definitely being able to go and face the best competition. And we'll go to Manhattan and we'll get beat up pretty good probably, and that's good for us too, to go down there. And we think we're pretty good, but there's to see how good some teams really are. So we have been very fortunate, and the district's very supportive of that, allowing us to put meets in our schedule for either individual athletes and their events to go compete against the best, or our teams to compete against the best.
Well, you mentioned early on when we were talking about, especially in in your early years when you took over the program, of Ithaca being one of the mainstays as far as Section 4 is concerned. And we have seen a budding rivalry through many years between the Corning School District and the Elmira School District. And there have been one or two premier athletes who have gone head to head, and you never really know who's going to have that little extra kick, a little extra juice at the end of the meet itself and like that. So have we moved on to maybe determining who is your main rival here in Section 4? And what about across the state? Who has been perennially one of those teams that you've seen more often than not?
Yeah, so in cross country and track, and I guess in cross country it does tend to be Ithaca in Section 4, who's for even the years that we were fortunate enough to win state championships, Ithaca was a top 5 team in New York State on the boys' side. On the girls' side this year, Ithaca's a top 10 ranked champion. They probably have our top 10 ranked team. They probably have the number one runner in New York State. Sadia Berkovitz is from Ithaca on the girls' side. So they've been a dominant team in cross country and a good rival for us. In indoor track, I guess probably across the board in recent years, it's been Ithaca because they have very large numbers of athletes. And so in a track and field program, numbers can help you as well as filling out depth and events. Statewide, for many, many years in cross country, Fayetteville Manlius was not only a top team in New York State, they're on the women's side. I think they won 10 out of 11 national championships in an 11-year span. Their boys have won nationals. So Fayetteville Manlius out of Syracuse is a dominant cross country team. In track and field, it's not, in terms of our focus there is mainly trying to be stack champions in track and field, and that can vary from year to year. Who's the strongest teams in stack? No, say in indoor and outdoor, I guess our focus is often on the individual, where we have our team goal is in indoor to win a sectional championship, a class championship. Our team goal in outdoor is to win a stack championship. But really in indoor and outdoor track, you're also focusing on developing athletes and trying to have individuals qualify for the state meet and to have state champions. So it's a multi focus there. There's a couple of meets where it's team focused, and then a lot of the season is really focused on individuals because you don't really have a state champion team in indoor or outdoor. They might score up points, but it's not really something that you can shoot for.
Okay, well, we'll pay the rent one more time. Back with some name dropping and some final thoughts from Ray Lawson when we continue right here. Sports in the 607 is brought to you by Solutions Federal Credit Union. Privileged to have Ray Lawson from Corning Cross Country and Track and Field as our guest today on Sports in the 607 in our final segment. I mentioned in the last segment we would drop some names and see what kind of reaction I get from you. But we mentioned the Lawson family as a running group as a whole. Kevin Mosher is one gentleman who comes to mind. Talk about 3,200 and 1,600 meters. A young man that I got to know only because his family had lake property where my daughter and her husband had lake property. So Jack Grigorski was the young man that I'm referring to. And man, you have some young people. Most recently, Ashton Bang is one young man who comes to mind. Gabe Cornfield and Tevlin McLaren, Lindsey Butler. I guess that's probably a name that you're familiar with.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I could chat about some of this. So I'd like the first. Oh, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. We're good. You keep it going.
Yep. So yeah, I would like, there's a couple people, so I could not necessarily in any order, but Lindsey Butler definitely deserves a huge shout out as it was I think our only track and field NCAA champion in the 800 meters. And she has continued to run amazingly well. Very proud that this summer at the USA Championship, which on a non-Olympic year is like an Olympic trials type year, because on
Right.
Olympic years there's Olympics on the USA's. So both Lindsay Butler and Jessica were in the same event at USA's this year in the 1500 meters. And Lindsay has a 4:05 1500 PR. Jessica ran 4:08 this year. Lindsay ran, I think, a 4:19 or 4:20 road mile. So Lindsay Butler has just continued, and we knew this in high school. She was, a multi-sport athlete, and we could see the talent as a runner, see the talent as a runner. And then once she focused on running, she's just so smooth, so fast, so efficient. Just very proud of what she's accomplished. And she's has a right now. I think she works part time as an engineer, and she's looking to be running professionally, hopefully, and find that balance. Very proud too. You mentioned some names there, a lot of names. One of the things we are very proud of here is the number of athletes we have continuing on to run in college and to do well there, and to take their running and use that to help them to get into great academic schools. So Ashton Bang at Dartmouth, Jack Rogorski at Princeton, and they're super, super bright athletes and hardworking students. And then, all things being equal, it's very difficult to get into Princeton. It's very difficult to get into Dartmouth, and the running is another thing that helped them there. So to see that benefit people in their lives, as well as all the benefits you get from doing a sport and learning from success, learning from failure, to see how many athletes who have enjoyed running enough that they want to do it at university, and how it's helped them at the university level. So definitely, and I have to give a special shout out to Jack Rogorski, because he was our first athlete under 9 minutes in the 3200. Ended up running, I think, 8:47 indoors and 8:43 outdoors, and so really just that's kind of a barrier, like the 4-minute mile, the 9-minute 2 mile. It's just when somebody breaks that, it's kind of special, and it really elevated the level of what was possible for us. And all the people you mentioned, such hardworking athletes, and balancing it as good students, and just names that are on our record boards, and names that still inspire today. People see that their accomplishments, and just make, as you said, these athletes make us look good as coaches, right? When they do the work and they have the talent and they perform under pressure. So yeah, great to coach all of them.
Well, does he sound like a proud father and surrogate dad?
Yeah, definitely.
Ray Lawson, I thank you so much for sharing, imparting a lot of your journey so far. I wish you continued success. Keep working with these athletes. Those of us who appreciate sports or just enjoy people accomplishing many wonderful things. It's really a joy that brightens up our life, and we couldn't do it without you being one of the driving forces behind the scenes. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Bob, and thank you for all you do to promote local sports, and to just be a supporter of us. So we thank you for that.
Thanks for joining us for Sports in the 607. We'll have another segment coming soon.